Well, hello. Hopefully, I have audio, which I've been messing with for the last hour, and hopefully, you can hear me all clear. It's nice to see everyone. It's a little bit later. Yeah. Oh, well, NA. Okay. I'm slow because my signal's off. And thank you all for being patient. I hate being late. Thanks for the orders always and the coffee. It's been that kind of day. For those of you, just if you're not familiar, there's two trials going on right now that we are both up to our necks in, and that would be Letitia Storch and Lori Vallow Daybell. Lori Vallow Daybell started today with opening statements, and of course, we're going to concentrate on that because both of the trials are full into witness testimony right now. There's a lot going on. Well, thank you always. I appreciate it. I really do. Glad the mic is finally working. It's been a little rough. I finally got the mic connected and then the signal went out for the internet. So I chose to wait until it came back strong before pushing the live button. Just give it a few more minutes to get settled. Hopefully that's all the hiccups it will have for today. Well, today we're definitely going to go over Lori Vallow Daybell. Now, this is an emotional trial, of course. It involves the deaths of two children. Well, it's only going to get worse here when you start to hear the testimony. So think we should just like get right into it. All I would say is that everyone will use the real language here. We're going to go by what they said. We're going to say it how they said it. I don't usually coach my language, but I do ask you all that if it's the kind of thing that's going to upset you in any way, please take care of yourselves and make sure you do what's right for you first, always. None of this is that important that you should jeopardize how you're feeling and your mental health for any reason at all. Okay. No. So, wrong one. So, we all know Lori Vallow. Yes, we do. Opening statements were this morning, just to get you a little familiar with who we're dealing with here. Remember this trial, the players. Okay, we've got Judge Stephen Boyce. You've heard his name repeatedly during this because some of us love him and some of us hate him. Judge Stephen Boyce is the one who has done three things that three things that have caused some controversy back and forth with people. Okay. The first one was after the pretrial hearings and all, we had several pretrial hearings where everything was available. We could see the video, we could hear the audio, we heard the attorneys, we saw Lori Vallow, we saw Chad Daybell. Well, during all of that, around the time of Lori Vallow's competency, Judge Stephen Boyce had decided that no more cameras or audio, no more cameras in the courtroom. Nope, not at all. So that was number one. Number two, he then came along and removed the death penalty from Lori Vallow, but not Chad Daybell. And it was a little controversial. People were going back and forth for it because of the reasoning. One was, in some kind of backwards penalty against lack of discovery timeframes being met on the prosecution side. It was like a back and forth with the defense and the prosecution, and also based on the trial, wanting to get an early trial in and the delays that had already happened, and in regards to some things with Lori Vallow and privacy issues. I'm not sure. Well, if she is convicted of first-degree murder, which is one of the charges, and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, she's got two charges that way, one for JJ and one for Ty Lee. So two first-degree murder charges that will not have the death penalty. Okay. And then the last thing he did that caused a little bit of disruption was he finally did sever the two trials. And basically because new DNA evidence came out, there's a hair that needed to be tested, and Chad Daybell waived his right to have a speedy trial, but Lori had not, and they were going to go ahead with the trial anyway. And in order for Chad Daybell's attorneys, John Pryor, petitioned the court to say, hey, with the new evidence, now we need even more time, and the death penalty is on the table, and all of this. So he just decided it would be best then at that point for both defendants to get the trial that they deserve, to sever it. This makes it a little more difficult for the prosecution. They got to present the case twice because conspiracy is involved. Conspiracy. It can be a mess, okay? Because it's conspiracy, when you hear what's the defense said in their opening remarks, you'll get what I mean. But the conspiracy part is going to be the most difficult when it's like he said, she said, and they're both pointing fingers at each other. And the third conspirator, which is the brother of Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, is no longer with us. He's dead. Oi! Welcome, NANA, new member to Murder Minions. All of you, welcome your new Murder Minion, NANA. We will be hitting you up for your perks soon, but we welcome you and thank you for joining. For those of you I didn't greet as you come in, hello, Charlie. Hi, T King, Tammy, I'm glad you're here. Jujubee, hey, it's good to see you too. Mrs. Cassandra, nice to see you. Glad. Hey, book lover. 92. Hello. Well, anyway, that's Judge Boyce. I happen to like him. He's soft-spoken. He's pretty good on the law. He gives good reason for why he's doing some of the things he didn't. I don't necessarily agree with removing the death penalty, but legally, in order to prove murder in the first to that degree for the death penalty for Lori Vallow, he may have just actually saved the case and made it easier for the jury to go that way. There's probably a lot more to it, and I can understand it. Not being a lawyer, I'm not going to get into the of that, but I will say it was quite the bone of contention. The other thing he did just recently was vote in favor, let the Woodcocks, which are the grandparents of JJ, they actually had custody of JJ first before Lori and Charles Vallow adopted JJ. He was with the Woodcocks, Kay and Larry. They're like they are his grandparents. Apparently Kay's child could not take care of JJ when he was born, and JJ was born with problems, and Kay and Larry took custody because they were not going to give custody to the birth parents. And he spent a lot of time with them. They love him very, very much. But Lori Vallow's defense team wanted them out of the courtroom because Kay Woodcock was going to be the first witness. Okay. And she was actually the first testifying witness today. Well, the judge said that since they're family, they could stay there. And the rest of them too. The cousins, Brandon, Berta, all of the family related is allowed because they have victim status, okay? But it actually they had to actually weigh in on motions on this. But Judge Boyce definitely sided on the grandparent side and said that they could stay and watch the proceedings. Yes, Juju K was the first witness, and we're gonna get to that. Yep. No. So let's talk about. Hold on. Oh, sorry about that. You see, the internet is not behaving with me today, and StreamYards seem to pull my name out of a hat to mess with today. Yep. Okay. Let me just go to the beginning and introduce you to the teams. Okay, so we have the judge. This is Prosecutor Lindsey Blake. She gave opening statements for the prosecution. Okay, the rest of her team is Prosecutor Rob Wood, who actually is the head of the whole team there in Idaho. And he hired from Missouri a woman who's done a lot of murders, like 100 different, consultant on 100 different murder cases. Rachel Smith is the attorney, also assisting here. Now, all three of them you'll hear me mention all three of their names today. Lindsey did the opening. Rob Wood, I believe, is the one who did the questioning of Kay Woodstock, and Rachel Smith did Brandon Bordeaux. Okay. The defense team is John Thomas and Jim Archibald. Okay. Jim Archibald will give the opening statement for the defense, and John Thomas is going to be crossing. I do believe he does cross on Brandon. I'm not sure if he crossed on Kay, but I'll double check that when we get there. But for now, let's talk about the opening with Lindsey. Okay. They came out strong. They came out really strong. Okay. Um, before the opening statements, okay, the judge, of course, he goes over all of the jury requirements. He swears the jury in. He tells them all about the different points of law that they have to take to, gives them all the jury instruction. Okay, and then they read the charges, which were for Lori, remember, conspiracy to commit the murder of Ty Lee. Okay, the murder, first degree murder of Ty Lee. Okay, then also conspiracy to commit the murder of JJ and first degree murder charge for JJ. Then also there is a charge of grand theft because of the benefits, social security benefits of Ty Lee's that she had arranged to be pocketed to herself. Um, so there's that charge in there too. And let us not forget that Lori Vallow still is implicated in charges in Arizona for the death of her husband, Charles. Okay. She's also got conspiracy in the death of Tammy Daybell on these charges. Okay. Okay. Lindsey Blake, prosecutor, came out, and these were her first words. The defendant used money, power, and sex to get what she wanted. It didn't matter what it was. Money, power, and sex. That's what this case is about. She's laying down the groundwork that Lori Vallow wanted what she wanted and would get what she wanted at any cost. She says in regards to Ty Lee had money. She was a young girl, 17 years old. Her father had died. She was getting Social Security benefits for it. She was getting ready to move on with her life and go on elsewhere. Ty Lee had money. Lori wanted it. Ty Lee's gone. It's exactly how Lindsey Blake said it. Ty Lee had money. Lori wanted it. Ty Lee's gone. She laid out the case that JJ took time. He was a lot to take care of because he also had lost his father, Charles Vallow, who was his adopted father. And when he lost his father, he became much more difficult to care for. JJ had some attention or disorders. He had meltdowns. He was a handful. He was entitled to Social Security benefits at that time. The defendant didn't want to have to take care of JJ anymore. He had money, though. JJ's gone. Again, Lindsey Blake said, the defendant didn't want to take care of JJ anymore. He had money, though. JJ's gone. She was very soft-spoken when she said it, not very loud, just very simple and matter-of-fact. There will be an audio of the opening statements coming out and the witness statements, and I will be putting the audio of the opening statements for both the prosecution and the defense. I think that's important when you get to hear all of the evidence and everything, that you know where they're going with their case. So I will take the time to put that together for you to make it easy. All right. Blake continued to describe how Ty Lee's remains were found. Now, this was quite distressing because the whole courtroom got to see these pictures. They put them up. And they put up Ty Lee's remains. And Ty Lee's remains were nothing but a mass of bone and tissue that were burnt. What was once a beautiful woman, she said, the defendant's daughter, was nothing but bones and tissue. That's how they describe it in the autopsy. She also disclosed at that time that DNA from Ty Lee Vallow was found on a pickaxe in a shovel located on the shed of Chad's property. They did show the picture. Just like Tammy had. JJ was also shown. When JJ was shown, it was a black plastic bag. And they showed his wrists bound with duct tape. And they showed the bag he was disposed in. That was very graphic. Much of the gallery from the reporting was absolutely disturbed by the visuals. Okay. Um, and I can just saying the words, I get a little disturbed myself. But this is the case. I mean, this is how horrible their demises were. Well, she continues on. She doesn't leave it there. She moves on to Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy. And she points out that Tammy had life insurance. And Lori wanted Chad all to herself. Now Tammy's gone. During the opening statements, Lindsey Blake disclosed that Tammy Daybell's death after autopsy, after being exhumed, once they decided it was quite suspicious. And it became suspicious based on internet searches and all that were done and things that happened prior to her death that they found out about after. Well, they disclosed during the opening statements that Tammy Daybell did not die of natural causes. Tammy Daybell died of asphyxiation. Chad Daybell's statement, when he called and said she went to bed and never woke up, that she just died in her sleep, seems to be not the case. Well, she died of asphyxiation. The kids were 7, Paula. JJ was 7, and Tylee was 17. Yep. Anyway, Blake shows an autopsy photo of Tammy Daybell and says that Lori and Chad were in Hawaii getting married. The missing children, the sudden death of Tammy, the quick marriage of Chad and the defendant left so many questions for those still grieving the loss of Tammy and those still wondering 24/7 about the whereabouts of the children. And yet, she points out that Lori and Chad were in Hawaii planning a wedding, not looking for the children, not mourning Tammy. At this point, many people were crying in the galley, including the Woodcocks. Kay Woodcock, once they started talking about JJ, was having a very hard time controlling herself and was crying openly in court. Blake continues on to tell the jurors about Chad and Lori's religious beliefs, that Chad and Lori called themselves James and Elena and believed they were religious figures. At the time they met, they were both married to other people. Their spouses were both alive when they met, and well, when they first met, at least. Remember, the defendant will remove any obstacle in her way to get what she wants, and she wanted Chad Daybell. That's a quote from Lindsey Blake. Blake tells us that based on all the financial transactions and all the money being moved on account, that case actually starts way back in October of 2018. That's when they first met, Chad and Lori. Blake tells the jury that we're going to hear from Lori Vallow's friend, Melanie Gibb, and Zulema Pastenas during the trial, two of her friends who were there when Lori and Chad met for the first time. Okay. You're going to hear about that story of James and Elena, that Chad Daybell would text Lori quite explicit things that James and Elena were up to and doing. And that is their code names for each other while they were texting back and forth. You're going to hear about a rating system of light and dark. How Lori told others that with the help of Chad, she could rate people as either light or dark. And that That actual rating system ended up evolving into what turned out to be her involving casting to try to get the darkness out of people. And the statements about the only way to remove the darkness once someone had become zombied with the darkness was to kill them. They had to leave their bodies to be free. You're going to hear about Alex Cox during the trial. This from Lindsey Blake. Alex's purpose was to protect Lori. He was a warrior, and that was his job. Whatever Alex wanted, whatever Chad and Lori wanted, Alex would do. He was very much a part of everything that they did. If casting never worked, remember, she says, if casting doesn't work, you evolve to a zombie. And a common theme was that then the body had to be destroyed. And Blake continues on to say if Chad and Lori asked for it or asked any of it, Alex would do it. That the three of them are the conspirators. What you won't hear in the testimony, says Lindsey Blake, is you won't hear that when JJ went missing, that the defendant did anything to find him. As a matter of fact, you're going to hear testimony from others and phone calls recorded where she repeatedly says she knows exactly where he is long after he's been missing, but well before he's been found deceased. We're going to hear, Blake says, from April Raymond, another one of Lori's friends, that she told people that they were on a religious mission to gather over 144,000 lives. So she needed to spend her time and energy with the church doing that. She couldn't be bothered. Lindsey Blake reminds everyone that the defendant told everyone that she was translated, so she never had to repent for bad deeds. And also, when they moved to Rexburg, Alex Cox texted Lori and said that he had changed the Wi-Fi password and it was too many kids. And Lori responded funny. Lori reminded us that not only was Tammy Daybell found deceased in her bed, later to be of asphyxiation, but that she also was approached by a gunman 10 days prior to her death on the 9th of October in 2019. Originally, she thought it was a paintball gun. But also we'll hear testimony that failed, and that night Lori was mad that night and was on the phone and was telling someone he can't do anything wrong, right, referring to Alex. More details on the driveway gun were disclosed. It was unsuccessful, and Tammy did report it. Once they move from talking about JJ, once Lindsey Blake moves from talking about JJ, Kay Woodcock does compose herself and spends many moments staring directly at Lori. Lori is looking back. Lori is watching the attorneys. Lori is staring at the Woodcocks. Lindsey Blake continues on and says that after Tammy died, Lori met Chad's kids and they were all over each other. Chad told his kids that Lori had a young daughter who recently died, but at that point, he never mentioned JJ, and Lori never said anything either. Blake tells all about the Malichetti wedding rings, which Kay Woodcock had found searching all the way back in Charles Vallow's Amazon account. Yes, Lori Vallow used her dead ex-husband's Amazon account to search for wedding rings and dresses and things for her ceremony to Chad Daybell. Well, when Kay Woodcock got into that account and all went back, there was stuff all the way back in May when they first met, searching for malachite things and stuff. And she thought that was all. That's not to say that it was meant for Chad at that time, although they had just met. But it definitely wasn't for Charles because during that time, remember, Lori Vallow disappeared for 58 days. And Charles Vallow never knew where she was. She had no concern for JJ at the time either. And that was a time when Kay Woodcock was then again watching JJ helping Charles Vallow out. But there's never any real answer for any of that. Lori is now looking directly at the prosecutor as she addresses the jury. Okay, the jury was very intently listening, some of them taking notes, definitely looking at the attorney as she spoke of all of the little infants. She was quite direct in her speaking. She wasn't very loud. She clear, succinct, like drop sentences. When she says, things like, this defendant is charged with multiple crimes, she says it slow and succinct. And when she says it's all about money and sex, she said it straightforward. That is all that Lori Vallow wanted. She did go on to list all of the charges, multiple crimes. But when she mentions the children, she made sure when she says Tylee Ryan's name, she says her daughter. And when she said JJ Vallow's name, she added her son. Okay. She made sure that she repeated again that Tammy Daybell died at the hands of another and died of asphyxiation, no longer natural causes. That both Chad and Lori are implicated in that crime. She also says that you'll hear testimony that after Tammy died, Alex Cox was quoted as saying, "I hope I'm not their fall guy," indicating perhaps he means Chad and Lori. And you know what? Alex Cox died the day after he said that. And Lindsey Blake made sure the jury knew. Police got involved in the investigation for the missing kids not until November of 2019. Blake says that's when Lori spoke with Melanie Gibb after the kids were reported missing. And Gibb asked Lori where JJ was, and Lori responded, "I know exactly where he is. It's recorded, and it'll be testified against." And she knew exactly where he was. But she wasn't helping anyone find him. Again, she brings up pictures onto the display, and she shows a photo, she being Lindsey Blake, the prosecutor, a photo of J.J. Vallow's arm wrapped in duct tape after he died, and Tammy Daybell's hands after she died. And Blake says those hands will never do anything. She said, unfortunately, she can't show Tylee's hands. There wasn't anything that remained of them. Then she shows a photo of Chad and Lori holding hands on a beach in Hawaii. It was a pretty strong statement of the hands that will never be able to do anything again because these hands had to do what they want. Blake reminded the jury that when you talk about first-degree murder, you don't have to personally end someone's life to commit the crime. She plants the seeds and legally states the framework that the conspiracy and first-degree murder are because the lives are over. But if that she talked about that's what she wanted, implicated in any way a plan, or assisted in any of the way, she is guilty of that crime, whether she laid hands or not. Now you'll hear a different story from the defense. Jim Archibald who's the defense attorney. But before I do that, I want to bring up a picture of Tammy Daybell, who's also part of this murder trial, because it's not just Tylee and Jaybell and Tylee or JJ. We have to remember this Tammy Daybell too in regards to this particular trial, and that also Charles Vallow is gone. Okay, now Charles Vallow, Lori's ex-husband, it has been said that Alex Cox actually said he did kill him. He did shoot him in self-defense. But now Alex Cox is gone also. So nothing else is going to really come of that unless we can get conspiracy for that also and murder also on that on Lori Vallow and or Chad Daybell. Well, that's to come in another trial. But Tammy Daybell also lost her life in regards to these two meeting, which it is quite sad, very sad. So many young people, so that this woman can have whatever she wants, and that is what the prosecution is painting as motive. Lori's wants and desires. Lori being the master manipulator here, because she wanted and was fascinated with Chad Daybell. She bought into everything that he was saying in regard to his religion. She read all his books. She was fascinated. She was smitten. That was it. This is what she wanted. And from that day forward, it moved forward to be that way. The defense team. Head defense is Jim Archibald and John Thomas joins. It is John Archibald that gives the defense's opening statement. Now, John Archibald doesn't he stands over at the podium. He doesn't like standing all around using the portable mic like Lindsey did. Lindsey Blake walked in front of the jury. The whole time she was in front of the jurors. Archibald stands at the lectern, and he introduces himself, and he says that for the past 32 years, he's had 27 murder cases. They're all difficult. He said he was assigned to this case, and he's paid by the taxpayers, and he thanked everybody for paying taxes. He said 99% of trial cases are resolved way before we get here. He introduces, his co-counsel, John Thomas, and another investigator by the name of Brandon Hobbs. He said being a defense lawyer is a hard job, and brings up the fact that 8 years ago, his office was bombed. And that was quite a thing. Somebody had some contention into how he was handling something and tried to blow up his office. Why that's pertinent to Lori Vallow's case, I don't know. But he made sure to mention it first. Now he's talking about who Lori is, where she was born, where she grew up, how many children she has, and the people. And says the thing that people are just naturally drawn to Lori because she has such a great personality and a bright smile. Archibald says that Lori was such a responsible mother that Kay Woodcock wanted her to adopt JJ, and that is true and will be confirmed by Kay's testimony. She did appear to be quite doting in the beginning, but things changed. JJ's parents couldn't take care of him. Kay Woodcock did want Lori and Charles Vallow to adopt JJ. She thought because they were younger and had a home life, it would be better for JJ than to be with them. And that part of that adoption arrangement was that they would stay in contact, that Kay and Larry would be JJ's grandparents. Archibald says that all the evidence will show that Lori was a kind and loving mother, that she had an interest in religion, especially the end of times type of religion. Some people could care less about biblical prophecies, and some care a lot about it, he says. He said, thankfully, in this country, we get the freedom to choose. He did say to the jury, after reading the indictment again, he said Here's the thing, though. With those kind of charges, did she kill, or did she assist, or did she encourage, or did she command? The prosecutors aren't sure what happened, but they want you to be sure. They want you to be sure. And he reminds them that they need to be assured beyond a reasonable doubt that the state has the burden of proving the defendant guilty. Lori doesn't have to prove her innocence, but the state must prove the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Archibald talks about Chad and Alex as co-conspirators. He says, the indictment, it names everyone, but here we will only focus on Lori. We need to be able to say what Lori did. He said, we're here because we haven't been able to agree what happened to these children. How did they die? When they died? Here's where you're going to come in, jury. Some of you are really good note takers, but you don't have to memorize what I'm telling you because the evidence will show. And again, he talks about the charges, how it's an everything kind of thing. Is she a conspirator? Is she the murderer? Did she direct them? Like, what was her part? They're not actually saying. They're leaving it all up to you. Archibald says that Lori has an alibi, and there is an alibi on file. And it says that she was in her Rexburg apartment when J.J. Vallow died, and she was in the apartment of Alex Cox and was with Melanie Gibb and Dave Warwick. Archibald says Lori was with Melanie Bordeaux in Hawaii when Tammy Daybell died. That is Lori's alibi. We do know that Lori was with Ty Lee on her very last day that she was seen alive when they all went to the park. Archibald then brought up the media and the publicity that's been going on. He said that it's tainted so many throughout the state and everywhere, and stresses media exposure is not evidence. He says if any of the jurors have heard anything, they need to set it aside and start with clean slate, as you're here to focus on what she actually did, not on what Chad Daybell did or what Alex Cox did. You're here to determine if there even was a conspiracy. You need to determine that Lori had anything to do with it. And that was it. Just pointing at the multiple charges and how conspiracy is so hard to prove. Well, that was the end of his closing statements. His opening statements. They weren't very long. Okay. At that point, judge declares a recess for a while. Okay. Notes that everyone I saw on Twitter was taking. There are quite a few reporters in the courtroom, and what they are disclosing is that Lori is looking around. She did pay quite a bit of attention to the Woodcocks, Larry and Kay Woodcock. Okay. Kay definitely was staring at her for quite a bit of time, and they were focused back and forth on each other for quite some time. But it's it has to be very, very stressful for the witnesses, knowing it's been so long and so many delays. I mean, it took us quite a while to get here. 2019, they started looking for the kids. Okay. And charges came up. I mean, we're looking at 3 years here at least since the charges were made. Well, hey, Jen and Verillion and Mrs. Cassandra. I see new names have come in. Hey, Beck. It's good to see you too. And Mippet. It's nice. Thank you, guys. Mousy, it's good to see you too. All right. I'm just checking through to see if you have any questions before I move on to the witness testimony. Yep, she had a direct, clear view of her. Absolutely, Kim. She definitely had a clear view. Her being Kay, the witness. Kay Woodcock had a clear view of Lori the whole time. Oh, good question, Jujubee. Says, are Chad's lawyers in the courtroom for this trial? John Pryor, main defense attorney for Chad Daybell, is in the galley watching everything. Of course. Good question, actually. He was there today. I saw it announced from 3 different reporters. Well, like I said, I'm looking at the reporters and then going back to the feeds. And then when we get the actual audio, most of the opening statements that I'm repeating are what has been quoted in more than at least 3 different sources as the exact quotes. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it. And then we will be getting the audio. No, you have to come grope, Jin. Thank you. Hey, fish nerd. Well, let me just see. Am I missing any questions? Because you can put them back. I know that sometimes StreamYards doesn't go back far enough for me. Okay, look at that. Okay. Yep. Okay, so I've got the one about the defense attorneys. I hear you always when we're talking about the what we have in common with Tisha Starch and Lori Vallow is total disregard for these children's lives, and it's actually heartbreaking. It is. She had an alibi for JJ. She did list that she had witnesses. She was in an apartment when they are saying JJ went missing. However, there are people that saw JJ with Alex Cox asleep in his arms, and that's the testimony that he was alive and well. Okay, and when they are saying, but they don't have an exact time of death. So, like the alibi, it's like she's pinpointing it to she's at this apartment doing a podcast at this time, but they don't have the exact time of death. So I don't know how that alibi is gonna be actually any good with JJ. But that's what she's saying, that she has witnesses that she wasn't anywhere near the Daybell ranch or home or property, so to speak. So, and she also says that she was in Hawaii at the time that Tammy Daybell died, and so she could not have killed her. Well, that doesn't mean she didn't conspire to, because she was quite upset when the first attempt didn't go through. And she was ordering things on October 2nd, well before Tammy Daybell died on October 19th. So it's hard to say that she didn't really know like what was going on. I know what she wanted the outcome to be. Or I can't really say that she wanted it to be murder of anybody, but she did want everybody free so she could marry Chad Daybell and they could just go off into the sunset. That's exactly what she was working towards. She was shopping for it. She was talking about it. She was late. She was planning her days that way, just doing her religious work with him and spending her time with him any way she could. But there you go. I just saw your comment, Beck. I can't start over. There's just no way. But I'll try to get you. I'll try to get you caught up. Okay. On that, Kay Woodcock is the first witness. Okay, and from the defense team, Rob Wood is actually going to interview Kay. What I did like about the prosecution is that they let all 3 of their members were out today. Lindsey Blake does the opening statements. Rob Wood does the questioning with Kay Woodcock, and then will be followed up by Rachel Smith, the 3rd member of the team, when we get to Brandon Boudreaux. Or Boudreaux? Boudreaux. It's like Boudreaux, but there's no R in the beginning, so I'm not sure. Probably mangled it. I do not think that Lori is insane, Jujubee. I think she's narcissistic, selfish, entitled. That's a hard one because I don't like to claim that anyone is insane for their beliefs, but it does look as if she got so entrenched in these beliefs that she'd use them as a reason to do whatever she wanted. You know, um, hmm. We do want to get both justice for them. Yeah, I don't really think she's insane based on if she was insane. Could she have been quiet the whole time they were looking for JJ and Ty Lee? Like she never said a word. You can't incriminate anything except for her saying that she knew exactly where JJ was. There's no incriminating statements or interviews or anything like that. Extremely selfish, yes, always grateful. I would go. Her logic is skewed, but she knew what she was doing. Exactly. I'd say very skewed. I think that's a perfect way to put it, Juju. I doubt she's insane. She's definitely skewed in regards to how she's looking at things. Mm-hmm. Um, mm. Legal definition would have been not knowing. Okay. Well, can you use the legal definition for conspiracy? So here's the thing, like maybe if she was legally insane and she didn't actually like for committing the crime, if she was hands on for it, like if she didn't know right from wrong or the consequences of what she was doing. She's had a mental health evaluation. She was in the facility for 9 months. Okay. And all of that time, during that time, remember, she did have consultation with a lawyer from the Latter-day Saints. Um, there was quite a big hubbub going on about that. Um, so I'm not sure. Hmm. And they don't have the actual insanity defense. It would help in regards to sentencing or as a reasoning or an understanding of why certain things happened, but it's not a defense. It's not a not guilty. That's for sure. You're correct, Gigi. Juju. Sorry, Idaho does not have insanity. You know. Hello, Perry Lyons. Welcome. Mhm. Anyway, let's move to the testimony of Kay. All right, Kay brought to light um, quite a few interesting things. Like she did purport that she thought Lori was a good mother, and she did push for the adoption for Lori and Charles to adopt JJ because she thought it would be a better home life for him, and for quite a while she was okay with that, or because like they were in constant contact, but then they started moving around and things happened, and there came a point, and Kay gives testimony that says that Lori, Charles asked Kay to come and help with JJ because Lori couldn't be found. Lori was away. Lori stayed away for 58 days in total, Kay testified to. And during that time, Kay came to help Charles where he was, and then she brought JJ back by her, because Charles had to do work, and she took care of him all during this time, but that they never found out where Lori was. She went to Phoenix and picked up JJ, and she flew him back. I don't know. She she states that their relationship just started to get bad after that. That Lori changed. Lori got involved with religion, more so this part of the religion and doomsday, and was focusing everything on that, and said she needed to, you know, that she just didn't have time for anything else anymore. When she when she first met Lori and the family and everything, she was very pleased. She had met Lori's parents and family members, and even Alex Cox at Family Matters. Well, they made the condition at the adoption that Larry and Kay remain involved in JJ's life, and they saw JJ every chance they could. Um, After he originally moved to Arizona, Kay and Larry went to Arizona within a month because they had a hard time detaching from him when in the beginning when he was first adopted. And Kay says they visited him about every 3 months when from Louisiana. Right. After JJ moved to Hawaii with Larry with Charles and Lori, Kay and Larry visited less frequently, but they still maintained contact through like phone and FaceTime. And she said Kay reports that they had a good relationship at that point with Charles and Lori. They were very close, and she says she felt very close to Charles, that they always got along, and that Lori was just a doll, that they were all good friends, and they thought everything was going well. Um, she reported that often Ty Lee would often visit her grandparents while Kay and Larry were visiting. Um, you know, and at first she was very good. She was being a very good big sister to JJ. They all really seemed to get along. But she did notice that Ty Lee was getting busier as she got older with her friends and etc. Kay reports that Lori was a good mom to JJ. And she says Charles was very hands-on and engaged. She recalls that she stayed with them for a few weeks in when they lived in Chandler in 2019. And that is when Charles reached out to Kay and said that Lori was gone and he was distraught. So Kay went to help him. So she went to Arizona and says she and Charles, they didn't know where Lori was. Kay, she didn't see Lori the whole time she was there, and that she brought JJ back to Louisiana with her because Charles needed to do his work, like I said, and that JJ spent another 2 weeks there with Lori missing. Between February 1st of 2019 and the end of March 2019, Kay and JJ were back and forth between Arizona and Louisiana. Charles and JJ then moved to Houston. Kay said they still don't know where Lori was, and Houston was good for Charles's work. Plus, it had good schools for JJ. And Lake Charles, Louisiana, is only like 2.5 hours away from the Woodcocks. So Kay then said that, they asked questions about Charles was a financial planner, and she also began to help him with his business, okay, because he was distraught over his separation from Lori, because at this point they're separated, because Kay helped him. She had access to his emails and his banking information. And this is how they disclose how she saw the emails of certain things, okay, and how she saw certain transactions that were made. This is how, because Charles Vallow is deceased, there's no way for him to come and testify to any of this. So they actually need firsthand anyone who actually saw or did anything on this. So she goes on to say that Lori moved back to Texas in April of 2019, but then she and Charles had moved to Chandler in June. Kay says in February of 2019, Charles approached her about having her named as beneficiary on his $1 million life insurance policy and to take Lori off because he wanted to make sure that JJ and the kids would be taken care of. And so he wanted to make Kay Woodstock, the grandmother, the beneficiary of his life insurance instead of his wife. So there is another article in regards to the life insurance story, and I will give you that link right here for you to read later, should you choose. Okay. You could go into greater details there on that, but that was quite interesting. That was something new to me. I had not heard that before. So, of course, then Charles dies. Alex Cox shoots Charles. Now, says in self-defense. He had actually testified to that to the police. But then, of course, Alex Cox is gone now, so we're not going to hear from him. But Kay said within a week of Charles's death, the insurance company contacted her to say she was the beneficiary. Kay says Lori texted her after Charles died. Kay was Kay has Lori's old phone numbers written on paper in front of her and reads out all of the numbers then. Uh, well, Kay says that once Charles died, she didn't really get to hear from JJ, and the visits got a little weird. She last saw JJ the weekend of May 17th, actually physically. They had a pizza party. It was in Louisiana, and they were celebrating JJ's birthday. And he got to spend the weekend with his grandparents and then went back home to Houston. She said that she had only had contact with JJ 3 more times before he died. She had a FaceTime call with him after his father Charles died. And he normally had an iPad or a phone, she says, and he would walk around and talk to Larry and me. And he wouldn't hold the device to him. He'd walk around and we would see the ceiling in most of the places where he lives. You know how the kid would like hold something out in front of them because they're talking on it? You know, but at this visit, it was different. JD didn't have the device in his hand. Someone was holding it for him, and it was a short call. He would look up, and whoever it was obviously taller than him. Kate describes another FaceTime call where JJ was in a foul mood. I didn't want to talk. She says JJ was having a meltdown, and Kay was very upset that Lori waited until the evening when JJ was overtired to chat. Kay says the conversation was under a minute long and very agitated. He was obviously upset. When the very last contact that she ever had with JJ was on August 10th of 2019, and it was very short, less than a minute. She attempted over the next few months to contact her grandson, but she never got any response from Lori. She just kept reaching out and nothing. So Kay made arrangements to go to Phoenix to pick up JJ and fly him back to his father's memorial service in Louisiana. Kay was going to then fly JJ back to Phoenix, but it never happened. Kay says JJ was allowed to go, but Lori never answered any of her messages to make arrangements. And Lori did not go to Charles's memorial service. At this point, defense John Thomas has an objection he wants to make with the jury out of the room. So the jury gets sent away, and Thomas raises his objection about the papers Kay Woodstock referenced containing Lori's phone numbers. He wants to know how often, Kay has met with the prosecutors over the time and says the state never told them. Rob Wood responds. Boyce then overrules the objection, and then we go back to lunch because apparently he just didn't like the idea that they knew all the phone numbers and everything. Apparently, she's making notes on what to make sure she brings up. And I guess he was acting as if the prosecution was leading her, but they weren't. She's allowed to, know what she wants to put forward and what's important. And they did have her on the witness list like the whole time. So, um, at this point, I want to show you the sketch artist rendering of the testimony. Kay cried during the testimony quite often. She was direct but emotional. They mention anytime she needs to talk about JJ, they said that she would get quite upset. It was hard. She did look at Lori a lot. She looked at the prosecutor. She looked in the galley. Well, she looked at Lori a lot. She stared at her when she said certain things. They come back from lunch. Okay, it was a long break, and she's more composed. But now they've got to get all the documents into evidence. So they show her the birth certificate. It gets confirmed that it's legit, that is the one. Wood shows the final decree of adoption, and it's admitted into evidence. And they confirm it. Okay. They also show the Louisiana birth certificate of JJ that shows now that Charles Vallow and Lori Noreen Cox are the parents. They also go and show a picture of JJ. Now, we don't have the exact picture that they showed of JJ because we're not allowed to see the evidence based on this right now. But Wood asks Kay what the document is, and she responds through tears that that is a photo of our beautiful grandson, JJ. And when asked to identify him by picture, she really kind of lost it. She said that that was one of her favorite pictures of him. It's the picture of JJ buckled into Larry's pickup truck. This is the image. Some of the newspapers are actually showing it. Um, it's in the neon green shirt, you know, and with the seatbelt on. His hair all blonde and sandy. It's quite cute. But based on the fact whether it is evidence or not, I chose not to put it in there. If they do release it, I'll definitely add it to this presentation so that it can be seen later. Okay. She describes, Kay goes on to describe when she and Larry went to meet with law enforcement after Charles' death. They were very concerned about JJ's well-being, and this is when Prosecutor Wood asked Kay if JJ was ever physically with her in November, and Kay says no. And Kay says on November 8th she was at home in Louisiana, and that she had a printer that belonged to Charles. And when she woke up that day, she went to figure out how to use the scanner on the printer. She woke up early, and something told her to go to the computer, where she saw Charles' Gmail account. Charles had given her the password, and it worked. And that is where she went in, and she found out that Lori she noticed a lot of emails in the account, including a confirmation email of an Amazon order that was sent to an address in Rexburg. Kay said after she saw that, she contacted her private investigator and also Brandon Boudreaux. Kay then went into the browsing history of that Amazon account and saw searches for a beach wedding dress, a bathing suit, men's large white linen top and pants, and a malachite wedding rings. And the date of the order was October 2nd, 2019. That date's significant, sidebar over here, because Tammy Daybell is still alive. Tammy Daybell died on October 19th, 2019. Kay says she met with the Rexburg police in January of 2020. She says before the situation, she had never heard of Rexburg, Idaho. At the advice of the FBI, Kay offered a reward for information on JJ. And Kay says they reached out to every media outlet they could to get word out for missing children. And if you all will remember, in 2019 and in 2020, we saw the Woodcocks on every article, everywhere. We didn't see Lori. We didn't see Chad. We saw the Woodcocks looking for JJ and Tylee. We saw everybody in the neighborhood, all of the friends and family, all talking about it and looking for him, but we didn't hear from Lori Vallow at all. Her testimony goes on, and Kay says that she learned that Lori married Shay Daybell and was using Charles's Amazon account to order items. Kay says she became aware of the bodies of JJ and Tylee when found in Chad's backyard in June of 2020. Now, prosecution is done asking questions, and so John Thomas will be countering. He asked Kay how long she and Larry cared for JJ. Okay, and Kay says that they had wanted to adopt JJ, but after meeting and talking with Lori and Charles, the atmosphere was a lot more conducive for a baby. So remember, JJ was so young when he was adopted. Kay says there was no special schools where she lived for children with disabilities. They were younger, they were ready for it, and more prepared. Also, Charles was 5 years older than me. He could run circles around a 25-year-old. Lori was 7 years younger than I was, and my husband is 65. We knew that it was going to be a lot for the two of us. We wanted the best for JJ, and we thought that Lori and Charles would be the best option. Lori at this point is staring straight at Kay when they talk about the adoption, when they talk about how she was as a mother. With her defense attorney up there, With her defense attorney Thomas up there, she is staring straight at her the whole time. So then the prosecution is the defense asks her about the time she went to help Charles. Kay talks about going to help Charles when he said he wanted a divorce. Lori came in and began arguing with Charles. Melanie Gibb was there, and Kay recorded the conversation. Charles then moved to Houston as it was a better place for JJ. Kay says that in 2019, Lori left her husband and her child for 58 days. She knows it was 58 days because Charles kept track of every day. She never reached out to JJ. She never reached out to Charles during that whole 58 days. Then defense Thomas is asking her about the printer scanner. And Kay says, well, it was kind of weird because she never really wakes up that early in the morning. She just had it on her mind and she went. It was bothering her. So she actually made the statement that she thinks it was divine intervention because of what she found when I got hooked up. It was God's hand hooking her up to all that information. Because once she hooked up the printer and the scanner, and then the email stuff, the access to it for the email address came on her computer, that's when she found everything from Amazon. At that point, after she makes that statement, Thomas has no further questions, and prosecution has nothing further. So Kay is excused, and the next witness is called, and that witness is Brandon Budrow. Budrow. You might remember from interviews, Brandon Budrow, unfortunately, was the one who asked to identify JJ's body. He was very close with the family. He is married to Lori's niece, or was married to Lori's niece. They're divorced now. Okay. And he had quite a lot to tell. For Brandon is sworn in, okay, and it will be Rachel Smith that asks the questions here. Brandon was married to Lori's niece Melanie for a little over 10 years. They got married back in 2008. They have 4 children together. Rachel Smith starts by asking Brandon about Melanie's family, her aunts, uncles, grandparents. Brandon says he met many in the family in Arizona, and they spent most of the holidays together, normally, like families do. He said he lived with Lori and Charles for part of his marriage to Melanie, that they spent a lot of time together. Brandon got to know Lori's children, Colby, Tylee, and JJ. Brandon, often tearful, choked up and said that his oldest son was very close to JJ and they spent a lot of time together. JJ loved to hang out with Brandon's kids. He was fascinated with traveling. Lori is grinning at this when he's testifying. She is smiling at him and grinning while he testifies. Brandon continues to say that he loved hanging out with Braxton, Brandon's oldest son. JJ just loved playing with his kids. Brandon also said he was close with Tylee, and when Tylee was 8, Brandon was the one who baptized her into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Brandon says that Melanie was very close to Lori as an aunt. She didn't look at her as an aunt, but looked at her more like a mom figure, that she was always trying to emulate her or be like her. Both Brandon and Charles got along well because they both had a passion for business and sales, and they got a lot to talk about it, and they connected over it. So they both loved their families. They both had families and kids and their wives. It was very easy for the 4 of them to all spend time together. So the Vallows and the Budrows spent time together often. They were very often together. Brandon says that the last Christmas his family spent with Charles and Lori was in 2018. He says other people were there, including Melanie Gibb and her family. But Brandon says this was the one that felt a little different. because all the relationships did not seem as close as they used to be. There seemed to be distance. Brandon says when he first married Melanie, her religion level was low and she didn't enjoy going to church. He says for most of their marriage, he had pushed to go to church. But in the fall of 2018, she started getting really passionate about going to church and certain church ideas. This is Melanie began attending what they called firesides meetings. They were not sponsored by the church. She was coming home with different ideas about what was going to be a faithful member of the church. Brandon says Lori was at the firesides, but Charles did not go. Melanie told Brandon the firesides were her thing, and she made it very clear that he was not welcome to come. Brandon says Melanie felt the need to go to temple every single day, which he felt to be a little extreme. Brandon says during trips to Disney, Melanie would need to go to temple, and she was focused on the idea that the world was going to end soon. He says they had a disagreement about buying $10,000 worth of food storage because she thought the world was going to end right away. He also said that things got really bizarre in 2019. That January, Brandon got a call and a text message from Charles that Lori was accusing Charles of infidelity. And Brandon says things went from 0 to 100 really quick. Melanie was adamant with him not to take sides in the Lori Charles split up and to stay out of it. Brandon then says in June of 2019, Melanie, and his kids went to Utah to stay at Melanie's parents'. Brandon's grandfather had died of a heart attack unexpectedly. So Brandon's mom called to tell him about the death, and Melanie said she wouldn't go to the funeral, and she didn't want anything to do with it at all, which she said was very uncharacteristic. It was shocking to him. After an argument, he went for a walk and he came home, and he just wanted to talk to Melanie, to break through to her, and he was begging her to tell him what was going on. Melanie said she had a revelation from God that she didn't feel safe with him at the house and accused him of being a homosexual. And it ended with Melanie going to sleep and Brandon being overwhelmed. But just like that, he was now out too. Lori had told Charles, "Nope, you're out." And now Melanie was telling Brandon the same thing. Brandon says he texted Charles about his expressing frustration. He also texted Lori. Lori never responded, but Charles spoke with him on the phone. Brandon had gone to a counselor and spoke with his bishop about the situation, and he was visibly tearing up while he was saying all of this, especially when he talked about the last time that he spoke with Charles. Brandon never saw Tylee or JJ again. Melanie and Brandon used a mediator to get their divorce, and they searched out the lowest conflict way to get a divorce, and it was quick. Brandon got a rental property, and custody arrangements with Melanie were complicated. Melanie says she's scared of Brandon, and she didn't want to get a lot of time with the children. Well, Brandon says on the morning of October 2nd, 2019, someone shot at him in front of his house. On this, the defense jumps up and objects. They don't want this in. It says this isn't relevant to the issue at hand. Attorneys are now meeting in a sidebar conference with the judge over there. So that got broke up. They took a 20-minute break, okay? And when they got back from the break, Judge Boyce addressed Thomas's objection before the jurors are brought back in. They say that the information about Brandon, Rachel Smith contests and says that the information about Brandon being shot, it's part of a common scheme and plan. And the defendant with the co-defendant conspired and planned to kill multiple individuals in her own world. Smith says it's very relevant to conspiracy. Smith says the shooting of Mr. Bordeaux is what got law enforcement involved and interested in the case. Thomas then backs and says that the argument is a stretch at the best and asks Boyce not to allow the testimony about the shooting. But Boyce overrules the objection and he's going to allow Brandon to proceed with his testimony, but warns the state that they must show what they have alleged, that there is a common scheme and plan. And jurors are now being brought in to hear the rest of the testimony. Brandon now recounts the events of October 2nd. He got the kids ready for school, dropped them off, took one child to daycare, and took the last to Melanie's house. Brandon then went to the gym. After he exercised, he left the gym to go to his new home. Brandon said only 5 people knew where he was living: his neighbors who helped him move in, Melanie, whom he had to tell. As he turned the corner onto the street of his new house, he noticed a Jeep parked really close to a van that was parked on the street. The Jeep Wrangler had a Texas license plate, and there was no tire on the back of the Jeep. Instead, the window was kind of open. Brandon noticed a gun with a silencer pointed out. Suddenly, his window shattered, and he heard a gunshot. Brandon accelerated the car and called 911. As he parked next to the public pool, Brandon says he saw the Jeep come around the corner and tried to follow it. But the dispatcher told Brandon to park in front of his house until the police come and do not follow the car. Brandon met with the detective and remembered that Ty Lee had a green Jeep Charles had purchased for her with Texas plates. Brandon knew the VIN number, so he gave it to law enforcement. Charles had given the VIN number to Brandon earlier, as Brandon is an insurance agent and ran insurance quotes for all their family vehicles. After the shooting, Brandon had some beliefs about who did it, and he became concerned. He remembered a bunch of emails Charles sent him before he died about the groups that Melanie was in, the religious groups. Brandon went back to check the emails, and most of those had come from Chad Daybell. Brandon says, in my gut, something felt wrong. So he contacted law enforcement, and after he did a Google search for Chad Daybell's name and found Tammy Daybell's obituary. After talking with police, he realized nobody had seen JJ or Ty Lee for some time. So now Ty Lee's birth certificate is admitted into evidence. And a photo of Ty Lee from her teenage years is also admitted into evidence. When asked where Brandon was when he learned about the bodies of JJ and Ty Lee being found, he choked up. I was in my parents' home in their garage. It was the day after my wedding. Brandon went to Rexburg on June 11th. When he arrived in Rexburg, he met with Larry and Kay Woodcock, and police asked Brandon to identify JJ. At this point in the trial, Brandon is crying on the stand. He's wiping tears from his eyes, and he's doing his best as he recalls how he was asked to identify the body and what he did. At that, Rachel Smith is done with her questioning, and they turn a very upset Brandon over to Thomas, who will now cross-examine. Thomas asked him first out about the Google searches he did after he was shot at. Brandon says he searched for Chad Daybell's name to try to get more information about him. Thomas then asked Brandon why Melanie would think he was a homosexual. And Brandon said, she told me God had told her I was a homosexual. And then Thomas follows up by asking Brandon about a video a friend posted on Facebook of him at a Pink Pony, a club in Alabama. And Brandon says that came about because he asked Melanie to give him evidence that he was a homosexual, and she pointed to this video. Brandon says the Jeep involved in the shooting was parked about 20 or 30 feet away from him when the shot was fired. Brandon says he's positive the bullet came from that Jeep on cross-examination. He did not see the muzzle flash, but he did see the silencer. So he reaffirms with Thomas, I was looking straight at it. I clearly saw it. Brandon explains why he had the Jeep's VIN number, because Thomas is asking him, how did you know? Charles asked him for a price on auto insurance. He gave him the VIN number of that Jeep to prove. Thomas asked Brandon why the police had him identified JJ. And he says, again, through tears, I think I was as close to JJ as Larry and Kay We were all family. We were all together. It was a pretty overwhelming task to do, but I had to do it. Brandon says they may have asked Larry, but it may have been too much for him. He doesn't know exactly, but it ended up to be him. Thomas then has no further questions. Rachel Smith comes back and asks the judge that since Brandon does not live in Idaho, asks if he can be released from his subpoena. And neither the defense or anyone opposes. So Boyce suggests we break for the day and that the next witness will be tomorrow morning, will be Rexburg Police Detective Ray Hermosillo. Okay. There was that was a lot. They broke about 4:45 in the afternoon. Right before. This is the artist's rendition of Brandon. The picture I showed you of Brandon was from an interview that he had done quite a while ago. This is more now how sad and upset he was during the whole thing, which you can understand. Um, Quite traumatic to be part of that whole family unit and then to have it all crumble based on what appears to be paranoid religious beliefs. It's Boudra, okay, with the O kind of drawn out. Boudreaux. Okay, that's what I thought. Boudreaux. Thank you. He thanks always. I can count on you for that. Well, Brandon was very upset, and so was Kay. There was a lot of tears in the courtroom today. Um, every time JJ's name came up, and with the pictures that they showed, it was just overwhelming. Just to actually have the trial taking place now, they finally are in a courtroom. They're looking at Lori Vallow. She's coming up for justice in their eyes. You can imagine how the families feel. There were aunts there and cousins. There was quite a few relatives there to support for JJ's side. And as I said, the defense for Chad Daybell, John Pryor, was also in the galley listening. They have allowed select attorneys in, you know. I know. I feel for him. He had a really rough time. Brilliant says, gosh, poor Brendan. He first gets divorced and he didn't see that coming. Then he gets shot at, after the divorce. And now he's having to identify a child that he was close to. And it's really hard. He is a religious person himself, but he's not um, part of this doom and gloom part that they're talking about, this light and dark thing. He's not buying that part of it at all. It seems to be somehow some subset of this belief of church that they were going to. And it's, in his opinion, it started with these fireside meetings in where that kind of talk started and took off. And he was not welcome. He was told by Melanie straight out. But Lori was there, and Lori and Melanie have been very, very close. Okay. Hi, Heat Shield. All right, let me look back and see if you have questions. Oh. Yes. Oh, one of the most fascinating, I see you guys talking in the chat about the most fascinating thing about the Storch trial is that the jury in Colorado, in that court, they get to ask the witnesses questions at the end. And if legally appropriate and in no violation or objection by either side, they get the answer right away. Like you don't have to wait to the end and say, oh, when they said this, what did they mean? Like they get the detail right away to keep everything in context. I just think it's a great thing. Uh, yeah. Mrs. Cassandra says, so are they turning on each other now? Do you mean Daybell versus Vallow? I would say that that's inevitable. It is like the number one defense when there's conspiracy, that it wasn't me, it was them. And it's difficult because Alex Cox is dead. He's already admitted his part in Charles Vallow's death. He's a big player in everything that happened here. He had JJ asleep in his arms in the last time anybody saw him. He spent a lot of time. He was at the Daybell property. The phones all say so. Like, yeah, Chad Daybell, Alex Cox. Now, Lori says just at that time that they're tracking Alex and Chad over there, that she was in an apartment with her friends. Okay. Oh, yes, they are definitely going to be a lot of he said, she said, and a lot of like, how can you say that that person is gone? You know, have they given indication how long this trial will last? There was a brief interview with the defense as they left, and one of the questions was how long, and he said at least a month. Actually, in writing, they're saying 6 to 8 weeks. The court itself is saying 6 to 8 weeks. So, yeah, it's going to be a while. I saw in writing that there's over 200 witnesses that could be presented. We know how that goes. Okay. I'm going to be looking for the witness list to get to you. And like I said, I will be getting the opening statements into some kind of little nugget for you to just listen to what they presented. The defense didn't present much of an alibi, only the alibi statement during theirs, and also to point out that the way the charges are written, you got a lot to determine on yourself. Like, did she do it? Did she just have somebody do it? Did she like just ask for it to be done? Did she instigate it? Did she plan it? Like they were kind of trying to make the statement that like the charges weren't really clear, that it was not fair to leave it up to the jury that way, but we shall see. That is a long trial, Juju, a very long one. Well, they said also 6 weeks at least for Starch, also, and we've got Masterson coming up on the 17th. Like, so, whoop, yeah, gonna be good. Gonna be a hell of a long one, I do believe. I do believe. And wrenching. In wrenching. And hello, Wrecker. It's nice to see you. In Verilion. All right. So I think that if that's about it for you guys, 6 weeks too. I know. Yeah, at least Jujubee. Although doesn't it seem like that one's going a little faster? I'm gonna bring this down now. But doesn't it seem like Storch is going a little faster with the presentation? Now, I don't know what they're bringing forward as defense. I will say that when they left the courthouse today and the reporters were on the defense team, they did ask directly if Lori was going to take the stand. And Jim Archibald answered, I do not make that decision, nor do we consider it much towards the end of the trial. We'll know more about that. Right now, they weren't giving any answer on it. How many courtroom sketch artists sign off with fancy flourishes like they're trying to sell it on abroad? All of them, because they're very good. It is an art, and they want actually their name to be known so that they get called in for another one. I would say all of them, very much. It does seem like they're going right through the testimony. A lot of times the defense is not even, because you got a little bit of a difference there, Jujubee, because with Storch, she's already said she did it. She's just saying, I did it because I'm crazy. Okay. It's so they're not like, a lot of times the defense is not coming forward with a lot of questions for especially the detectives and the investigators right now, and the entering of the evidence that they have as far as the autopsy photos and all of that, because she's already said she's guilty. There's nothing to argue about there. There's no clarification to be made. So it's like zipping through witnesses a little bit faster, because the other side really doesn't have much to ask about it, or to challenge on it, since she's already said she's guilty. So like, why bother? Are you really going to say, like, are you going to do the defense stall tactics? Like, could you tell me how you collected that? And did you follow all the procedures? And then where does it go? And then what did you do? Not like in some cases that we recently followed, Yeah. Yep, exactly what always. I think I just said that exactly while you were typing. I said the same thing. I agree, Wrecker, and Heat Shield also. Like, to be a courtroom sketch artist is a massive honor, so they would want their name on all. Exactly. And I think, wow, it is very cool. And that's why I do like to show them. I want them, I want their work to be, they own it. I'm only showing it, to for their depiction. I thought they captured Kay Woodcock very well, especially in the two photographs. She was very upset, and to see the difference between Brandon's normal, like his prior look a year ago and now, was distressing, especially having to talk about JJ so much, so I kind of I feel for them, but I'm very happy that they're allowed in the courtroom now, that they don't have to be secluded and they're not missing it, because their big thing, like, they also petitioned the court to have this televised because they actually want front and center what happened to JG and Tylee. They want this out. They want justice for them. They want justice not just in the courtroom, but all over the world. They want it known what happened. Um, they don't want it swept under the carpet. They think that Lori needs to pay for this. She can't hide behind that smile and that gregarious personality that the defense was speaking of. Um, that she must be accountable. Yep. And it's true, Ricker. A courtroom artist not only accurately and so that everyone recognizes what you are drawing, but to put the emotion in it, capture the moment, and do it at great speed. Great speed with great accuracy. I mean, it's a gift, definitely. So no wonder their names are all flourish and nice and big, and I like to show them because they deserve the credit. He does. I do think that Brandon Boudreaux looks like a different person right now. You can feel the pain, and whenever Kay Woodcock spoke to, I could feel the pain. I did hear a little bit of the audio um earlier today, but people were talking over it, so it was really hard. I'm waiting for a cleaner version to share with you all, but you can hear in her point. You can also hear the accusation in her voice. Like, you can almost tell when you listen when she's actually looking right at Lori as she speaks, because her tone changes just a little. I hear a little more accusation and a little more blame, and I can't even imagine the heartache of knowing that you placed the child in the care of someone who had that much disregard for them. I wouldn't want to trade places with any of them, to tell you the truth. It's hard enough just reading about it, and my heart goes out to them. I do. But on that, I think I'm going to cut it short. I will be back tomorrow with a starch update. And I will see you all then. I don't know the exact time yet because the court ends, like when the court decides it's going to end over there. They did have a full day today. So we'll gather everything from the last we spoke was Thursday, so we'll gather everything from Friday. The court was open, and then we will also. They had no court on Thursday. They had court on Friday for Starch, and on Monday full day. So we'll bring you all the witness testimony from those 2 days, and well, yeah. Thank you guys. And thank you all for sharing it with me. Like I said, you got questions or anything like that let me just do that. All right. Just don't forget to like, share, and comment. Put any questions that you want or you did not think to ask now or come up later and you want me to look for you. I'm sure it's in something I'm reading. I can find you the answer. So, yep. Mm, definitely just hit the back of one of the videos and I will get back to you, you know. Yep, I do have a Patreon. It's right here on this little tag going around. I definitely do. And a Discord. Yes, I do, Buck. Yes, I do, Beck. And thank you, everyone. If you want to become a member, do so. If you have become a member and you're not in the Discord yet, and you have a Discord ID, would you please contact me so I can get you in there and you can enjoy some of the conversations we have with the murder minions right there and game night and all the rest. Okay. Well, thank you, Beck. Oh, Beck, that's nice. Thank you. So on that, we're going to put on our great outro, and then we will see you all tomorrow. Have a good one.